with liberty and justice for all.
May we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Zwicker?
Here.
Mr. Taylor?
Here.
Mr. Corman?
Here.
Ms. Palmer?
Here.
Mr. Person?
Here.
Mr. Prince?
Here.
Ms. Breyer?
Here.
Roll call, Mr. Mayor. All present.
Thank you, Bonnie. First item on the agenda is a very special presentation. Terry Gashiyama.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council President Zwicker, and council members and all of our honored guests here tonight. Make sure I don't hit the keyboard here. Tonight we're here to celebrate one of the special city programs that we have, and that's our Renton Youth Council. Tom Putoff, who is a recreation coordinator, is going to be doing the presentation, and you'll see all the kids in the back with their green shirts on here to celebrate the wonderful things that they do. I'd also like to introduce Tim Williams, Shirley Anderson, and Chris Stimson from the Recreation Division, who support the program, are here tonight too, so I appreciate that. So I'm not going to take up any time. I just want to say that, you know, we could have a lot of programs, but they're only as good as the person that really runs those, and that's what Tom does. He just is one of those outstanding employees that make these kids feel valued and a part of our community. So I'd like to introduce Tom Putoff.
Thanks, Terry.
Good evening, Mayor Law, Council President Zwicker, and council members. Is there Tim?
Help.
He was setting it up before. Is he in the back? Tim, can you come up? Sorry about that. Thank you for inviting the Renton Youth Council to join you tonight. And also thank you for giving us time to tell you a little bit about the history of the Youth Council, what we're about, and what we give to the Renton community.
That should be on.
Sorry, we're having a little difficulty with the PowerPoint.
Didn't tell us.
Right here. I'll continue with that. We'll just go on, and hopefully we can get that, catch up with it. The Renton Youth Council was established in 1995 after a teen summit at the Renton Community Center. Teens from the Renton area secondary schools, there we go, thank you. And the City of Renton Community Service Department came together to provide a link for to promote program ideas for the teens of the area. Since the inception 17 years ago, over 400 members have passed through the Renton Youth Council. All of the Renton secondary schools have been a part of it and have been represented in the Youth Council, as well as 8 other secondary schools in the community, primarily Liberty and Maywood Middle School, Liberty High School and Maywood Middle School. Some of the projects that the Youth Council does, or have done in the past, is drunk driving awareness and education. This project was a very neat project. We went to the high schools in the Renton area, and with the help of the police department, used the fatal vision goggles to have them simulate what it would be like driving. One person was driving with the fatal vision goggles and one person was driving with normal vision, so the teens could really see the effects of drinking and what it could have on you as a driver, or if you got into a car with someone that had been drinking, what those effects could be. And it was pretty poignant for the kids to see that. We targeted that for just before prom because there's always those tragedies that you hear about when you're trying to prevent those. Another project that we've been involved with was the alcohol and tobacco compliancy checks. Members of the Youth Council would connect with Seattle Public Health, and they would go out and try to purchase these products at local area stores, either in the city of Renton or in the outlying communities. If the store would sell them the product, then the public health officer would go in and either cite them or give them a warning, give them also materials on how to better train their employees to identify underage purchasers. One thing we've done for the past few years is the Relay for Life. The kids look forward to that every year. We go and put up tents in the Renton Stadium along with a lot of other teams from the community and raise money for the American Cancer Society. Many of you have seen us at the community service dinners, either the Communities and Schools fundraising dinner, the Citizen Year banquet, the Renton Rotary crab feed, to name a few. The Youth Council also serves as volunteers at the Salvation Army and at their community supper. A few kids get together, and it's a nightly service that they do for the homeless of the area. We've also helped out at both Union Gospel missions in Seattle, the men's shelter and the women and children's shelter. Some of the leadership training that we've done, one of them, or they're listed there, but one of them in particular is the Peers Educating Peers. This was a very dynamic group, not only of our youth council, but other youth councils from South King County area. They came together in a coalition and would train the youth council participants on different teen issues, anything from dating violence to eating disorders, substance abuse, just the whole gamut of things. And the teens really got to learn how to network with other communities, other youth councils, and some of those friendships are continuing today. We attended the King County Youth Summit in 2011, and one of the highlights is the Leadership Weekend retreats that we've gone to Ocean Shores and to Lake Wenatchee State Park. When we were at Lake Wenatchee State Park, we also wrapped in a service project along with that. We cleaned up their beaches and got them ready for their summer camping season as part of one of our community service projects and to help them out with their budget crunches. The application process is open to anyone 6th grade to 12th grade, and their applications are available online at the city's website, or you can contact me, and my phone number is listed there. So, happy to answer any questions.
Council, have any questions of Tom?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Person.
I want to tell him he really looks sharp.
Oh, thank you.
We're used to seeing you working hard with the groups. And I just, from personal experience, want to thank the council. They do a tremendous amount of work and good in our community, and they're always fun to have around. They're hardworking. They pick up real quick on what needs to be done and just get it done. So what a great attribute to our city all of you are, and I want to say thank you.
Thank you.
If you wouldn't mind indulging us, we'd like to have them come up and have their picture taken with all of you tonight. Thank you.
Up here.
I think if you stay up on top and work away, we have a number of children coming on. Kids, youth. Not
Young
children,
adults.
Young adults.
Young adults.
Politically correct.
I was going to sit next to Ed.
You know, Mr. Mayor, the year's almost over. The hazing.
Really quick. Yeah, Tom, you look too sharp. I'm gonna get you in that picture.
Hey, Tom, way to be color coordinated with
All right, so if I could, just a few of you clustered up a little bit, just spread it out a little bit, and a few of you come maybe down just on a knee. It's just right here, it's really tight. Yep, there you go. You come on over. There we go, perfect. Stand over by Tom, and there we go. All right. And the council's already smiling. Everybody ready? Couple, 3 shots. And one more. Great big one. Money shot. Great. Thank you. All right.
Oh, wonderful. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom, and thanks to all the youth council for being here tonight. We appreciate it. Okay, we're going to move on to administrative report. Mr. Covington?
I have no report tonight, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, now we're going to go to audience comment. We have several people signed up to address the council. When I call your name, please come to the podium, give your name and city of residence for the record. And you have 5 minutes. The timer's next to the city clerk. First is Beatrice Clark.
Hi, I'm Beatrice Clark. I live in Renton, and I'm beginning to be a regular at the City Council. I started coming here in December, bringing you issues of racism in your King County library systems, and as a result of that, you guys started an email flurry here up in the council, and I didn't find this out until much, much later. And I have a stack of emails here that came out from the King County Library, the King County Library Board, the City of Renton. When I made my appearance, it's like everybody went into a freak heart attack, and they wanted to have meetings and they wanted to have discussions about it. So as we progressed on, and I got more and more emails back through public requests that I made, not specifically for the emails, but they came in with other things that I had requested. So I'm going to get to my point tonight. There were letters, there was an email that I sent to Councilman Corman, a very cordial email that he responded to, and everything was fine. But in getting these emails back, I got one in particular, I got his email back, and the mayor had, I call it racially coded this email, FYI, and he sent it to Mr. Covington. Mr. Covington changed the subject to information for your files, and he sent it to Larry Warren, who is the city attorney. And when I got them, they were all blacked out. So for several months, I made requests. Eventually, a few weeks ago, I went to the Attorney General, and evidently they said they were going to contact the mayor. I don't know who they contacted, but a few weeks went by and I didn't hear anything. And I recontacted him, and he said that he was going to call the mayor again. So if he called you, it doesn't really matter. But last week, I got some emails in the mail that were supposedly clean copies. And when I and other people looked at the emails, there were a lot of discrepancies in the format, and the time was wrong on some. And in my dealings with emails, whenever you run them out, they look the same. Everything is the same. So these had several discrepancies, which is an indication to me that there were changes made. And perhaps the clean copies, supposedly clean copies I got, doesn't reveal what's under the blacked out copies. So I came here tonight to specifically ask you to explain why there are differences in the original blacked out emails as opposed to the so-called clean copies that were sent to me in the mail and also via email. And I would like for somebody, last time I asked y'all a question, everybody, the cat had your tongue, nobody could say anything. So tonight, I'm not asking you to respond, but I'm asking you to respond via email by Friday evening at 5 o'clock. And I've already sent you guys the copies, the clean and the dirty, and they're all looking pretty dirty to me. So I'm asking you to explain why there's so many differences on the original emails as opposed to the clean copies that you guys sent me. Thank you.
Okay, and Ms. Clark, so you've sent in your questions already to the city, so we have that?
I sent you the emails, and y'all can figure them out.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks. Next is Monica Richter.
Hi, I'm Monica Richter, Richter. I live on Mercer Island, but I practice up the street at Valley Children's Clinic. I've been practicing here for 15 years. I've been a pediatrician for 25 years, and I also have a PhD in molecular biology and biochemistry. As a pediatrician, wife of a dentist, and mother of two, I'm a strong supporter of water fluoridation. When we make a medical decision, we have to weigh the risks and the benefits. And it's clear in my mind that fluoride is safe. The risks are that too much fluoride can cause white spots. I've seen the white spots. My husband has worked on teeth with the white spots, and he says that they're firmer and they're not as cavity prone. The risks, the benefits are, again, that the teeth are not as prone to cavities when the water has fluoride or if we supplement with fluoride. So my patients where there's no fluoride in the water, such as Auburn, I will prescribe fluoride for them. I feel the benefits far outweigh the risks. However, I still see kids who have bad cavities, and those kids at that point are in pain, and the parents have to make a decision about whether to go ahead and repair the teeth or not. And many times the children need general anesthesia. And now the risks are higher because they have to undergo general anesthesia, which carries its own risks. And if they choose not to treat the caries, then the teeth will continue to rot, and when the new permanent teeth come in, that process continues and it will affect their permanent teeth as well. In conclusion, I urge you to continue to fluoridate the water, and if the water is not containing fluoride, then my plan is to go ahead and recommend that parents give their children additional fluoride. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Audrey Adams.
Hi, my name's Audrey Adams, ADAMS, 10939 Southeast 183rd Court in Renton. And I thank you very much for having the Committee of the Whole tonight on water fluoridation. I, however, do not come away with this as hopeful as I began the evening tonight. I had thought that it was going to be a 50-50, so there would be as much time devoted to both sides so that you could have a fair amount of time to listen to both. And instead, only one person was allowed to speak, who, Dr. Osman Sin, who brought tons of information to you with tons of references and didn't even come close to getting done with his presentation. Was an extremely scientific one. So being cut off, having come all the way from Oregon, he came all the way from Oregon, he took time off work, and he got 15 minutes. And he was only the only person who was allowed, although we have plenty of other people who would have liked to have spoke against fluoride. There was 4 people who were for fluoride that got to speak. And 2/3 of the time was devoted to pro-fluoride people. So I am disappointed about that. However, nonetheless, I am extremely appreciative that you allowed the opportunity for Dr. Osman Sin to speak for 15 minutes. But I want to, several years ago, after I was testifying in Olympia about my deep concerns, as you all know, regarding the safety of fluoridation because of my son, I testified, and we were leaving, and an employee of the Department of Health chased us, in other words, followed us out into the hallway. And I looked both ways and even moved away from the receptionist. And he said, "What you're doing is right, and should have been done a long time ago. Please keep speaking up because nothing's going to happen from the inside." That staff person knew that their continued employment would be jeopardized if they didn't continue to speak favorably about fluoride. So might that real or perceived threat also be felt by others in prestigious positions in public health? And quite likely based on those who've already lost their jobs throughout the country by speaking out against public policies such as fluoride. I'm going down this road because I want you to question the bias. It's important. And to question if they are free to tell you, even if they might have concerns on fluoridation safety. And assuming that no one's going to argue that teeth are more important than damage to babies' brains. Obviously, teeth don't trump brains. I must ask, what criteria makes someone an expert on fluoride? Is it someone like Dr. Osman Sin, who spent over 10,000 hours studying every aspect? Or is it a chief dental officer that, do they have the expertise to determine the systemic effects of long-term chronic exposure to fluoride? And the answer is no. Their expertise is in teeth. And unless, for example, the good people who spoke tonight in favor of fluoride, unless they have actually studied, and thank you, Mr. Corman, for studying the NRC report. But if you didn't study that, or if you didn't read the report that I brought to you on November 5th, which was from the Harvard School of Public Health, which was a meta-analysis and systemic review of 27 studies on neurodevelopment to brain on fluoride. And 26 of those 27 studies found harm to infants. Developmental harm to infants. That is huge. And nobody spoke to that. They did talk about 3,000 studies. Where are the research references? Please, look at the document. I didn't see any research references. So without any research references, and you say 3,000 studies, excuse me, where are they? Where are the references? And I ask you to please ask that same question. I think the road I'm going down is that just saying that fluoride is safe does not make it so. Saying that fluoride is effective does not prove that it's effective. And there's tons of science. It's in the books that I gave you last week. If you just please take a look at them. I'm sorry, I'm out of time. That's all I'm asking. Thank you so much, and I do appreciate the opportunity.
You bet, thank you. Next is Olamara Peters. I hope I didn't butcher the name. Was I close?
You were right on.
Oh, good.
Thank you. I'm Olamara Peters from Redmond. Thank you, folks, for giving thought to the matter of fluoridation. In the 70s, I downspiraled in food allergies and intolerances. And I lost the use of 90% of kinds of food, and I nearly died a number of times. And it took me 6 years to find a way back out of that down spiral and to get back safe use of most of the foods. Being able to eat is an incentive to pay attention. Since then, I learned the hard way many times over again that my fastest way back into that down spiral is fluoride exposures. And the hardest exposure to avoid is fluoridated water and all the things prepared with it. And each incident takes me weeks or months of detox all over again to regain my food tolerances. I spent those 6 years keeping a food diary of every bite and every effect. They're common effects. All you have to do is walk into a drugstore to see the economy we're spending on squishing those effects and everybody's awareness about them. But when everybody's soaked in fluoridated water, they don't have a chance to find out. It takes me, as I say, weeks or months of detox each time to get my nose above water, that water, to be able to tell the difference again. With this experience for 30 years, Dr. Osman Sin's public health figures make the best sense to me of the information I heard presented this evening. And I get the same ill effects from fluoridated water supplies that have been filtered as I get from unfiltered. The component that normal filters don't remove is fluoride. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is David John.
I'm David John, MD. I'm from Mercer Island, Washington. I wasn't planning to speak tonight, but it was very interesting to hear the different presentations tonight. What I heard was over and over again on one side, 3,000 references proving that fluoride is safe and is effective at reducing cavities. And then I heard some research presented by Dr. Osman Sin that neither one of those statements is supported by research and neither one of those statements is probably true. I assume you guys heard the same thing that I heard. So where do you go from there? You can't really ask these people to bring into you 3,000 pieces of research. You wouldn't have time to study them, even if they could produce them for you. So what I propose is a simplification for you to think about. I've studied for a year and a half into the fluoride issue. I always supported it before, just like Dr. Osman Sin, but that was before I researched it. During the last year and a half, I have looked at the research. I have some background to do that because earlier my career, I was a faculty member in research for the University of Rochester Medical School for 9 years. I published a number of papers in peer-reviewed journals and have won an award for outstanding research. That research was not focused on fluoride, or I'm sure I would have been opposed to it much earlier. That research was on other topics in biochemistry. But nevertheless, it gave me the experience to know whether I'm looking at good research or not very good research. If you don't understand what's good research and you try to send your research off for peer review, you'll get a shock because it'll come back and people will tell you it's no good. And they'll tell you why it's no good. And either you correct it or you don't get it published. So it's a quick teacher. So what my suggestion to you is this. Ask those people who would come before you and tell you that fluoride is safe and tell you that fluoride is effective at reducing cavities to produce for you one research paper. Any one research paper that you can review with us, some of us, myself. I offer myself for this help, Dr. Osman Sin, and so on. And you can review with the various experts who were pro-fluoride who just spoke with you. And you can review it for yourself, as Randy Corman has looked at a complex piece of 500 pages of research and made some conclusions on his own. Don't be daunted. Believe me, you can do what he did. The best piece of research that I can think of, if you want solid research in favor of the idea that fluoride is not safe and not effective, certainly not effective, is a 200,000 person study from India that you can find. It's called Teosha, Doctors Teosha and Teosha. Somehow, I guess they were husband and wife or brother and sister, I don't know. But they spent 30 years studying 200,000 college students who came to their college in India. And they knew where each student had grown up. And they knew the water supply, fluoride level of the water in each community where they had grown up. Now, no one mentioned it so far this evening, but of course, most of the normal water supply is calcium fluoride. Most of the fluoride that people put in their water supplies, such as Renton, is rat poison, which is called sodium fluoride. Isn't it true that Renton adds sodium fluoride, rat poison? The only reason you would dare to do it is you think that because it's diluted, it's safe. Isn't it? That's the only possible explanation you can have, is that by diluting it, it's safe. But at the same time, you feed it to an entire population for their whole lifetimes. And even the CDC and all these people have recently come out and said you can't dare to feed it to babies. You can't make baby formula up with it. It's prevented. The whole state of New Hampshire has just recently, between the legislature, both branches, and the governor, they've all signed it into law. That the state of New Hampshire, if you put fluoride in the water anywhere in that state, you have to let the public know publicly every year that you're doing that, because they have to be warned not to use that fluoride that either contains sodium fluoride or silico fluoride, which is even more poisonous than sodium fluoride. And then people compare this with calcium fluoride, which is in the normal drinking water, and people use the word fluoride. What is it? It's fluorine is the element. 13th most common element is fluorine, not fluoride. Fluoride is when fluorine is combined chemically with something else. It could be anything else. It could be sarin nerve gas, that's fluoride. It could be fluoxetine, Prozac, an antidepressant. It could be anything. It could be anything. It could be provided with silico fluoride. It could be coupled with sodium fluoride.
Excuse me, Dr. John, your time, 5 minutes are up.
Okay, thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you. Next is John White.
This is why the first gentleman had a problem because we didn't know he was coming in, and this was set up to read this, but Bonnie, I don't know how to make it go back, or Jay. Sorry to take time.
No worries. How's that?
That's pretty good, thank you. Hello, Mr. Mayor and council members. Thank you for letting me take some time again to speak to you all. Appreciate it. Last week, I had a chance to speak as well, and I learned something. I learned that the
Excuse me, would you mind stating your name again and also your city of residence?
Yes, sorry about that. John White, W-H-I-T-E, Bellevue, Washington. So what I learned last time was that there was no due process violation. We're still in the process, which was news. I learned something. That was kind of nice. I talked to the city attorney afterwards, and she said, no, we're still in the process, and you can still do public comment. So here I am again. So thanks. And so I tried to be a little more organized this time, and I basically have these items here, how to understand some of the potential height impacts to Renton, Washington's ADUs, auxiliary dwelling units. That is, if the city council approves it. Basically, these are the topics I would like to cover, but obviously not during this time. I'll basically focus on the first one, ADU height code, and then just 2 points here, and the rest will hopefully save for some other time. The ADU height code right now basically is, the present code reads accessory dwelling units are allowed up to 30 feet. So if you have a one-story primary dwelling or a two-story, doesn't really matter. The ADU right now under the present code, you can go 30 feet. So that has, one's been built from scratch, and as everyone knows, that was quite large, oversized, didn't really fit in the neighborhood that well. So the current code, which is being proposed through docket 91, and it's actually in the staff report, which came out right before the commission, the planning commission meeting, is to limit the height of the ADU to the same height of the primary dwelling. What that does basically is take from 30 feet down to whatever the primary dwelling happens to be. If it's a 11-foot single-story primary house, boom, that's what it's limited to, which that will works in a lot of situations. I'm going to present at least two to you. Hopefully we'll show you where there is some problem with that. What I would prefer is to limit the height of the ADU to, and you can see where it's crossed out, to no more than 5 feet, 9.5 inches taller than the primary dwelling, or 30 feet, whichever is shorter. So some of you may think that I'm trying to, keep the code like it is. No, I am not. 30 feet is huge. I'm just looking for some basic wiggle room to able to make things easier to design and build for homeowners, that type of thing. You may say 5 feet, 9.5 inches, that's a weird number. Well, that's based on the IRC 2009 code, the International Residential Code, which defines one story as 11 feet, 7 inches, and I'm just taking half of that. So it's very clear, that's where that number came from. So I'm not talking 30 feet or 20 feet, I'm just talking basically around, a little under 6 feet. And it could be less, So, the thing I'd like to talk about in about 2 minutes is that the impacts on one-story ADUs where the primary dwelling is 1 story. And basically, what I'm going to bring out is just the first 2 points there, the 1 and 2, and one of them is about the differing geometric footprint or orientation of the ADU compared to the dwelling place, the residential. I get nervous up here, it's hard to talk, sorry. And the other one is on like ADUs that are built where the primary dwelling is on flat and you got some type of slope. That's kind of what I want to talk about. So first, as you can see here, this line right here is the actual lot. This is the street out here, and then this is like the primary dwelling, which is like 1,100 square feet. The ridge is here, and the water is basically draining off this way. Now, this roof is a 412 pitch, roof pitch, and the height of it, you know, if you do the math, is about 3.67 feet tall. All ADUs that have been approved, and the one built from scratch in the city of Renton, has the orientation of the roof, the pitch, the same as the primary dwelling, and also the same orientation. So if you built an ADU in the back like this, since it's longer, this is 50 feet, to the ridge is 25 feet, just if you project the pitch of the roof, you're going to end up at 8.33 feet.
Excuse me, Mr. White, I'm sorry, your 5 minutes are up.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr.
I
Clement.
move we be given 3 more minutes to finish up this presentation.
Okay.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Clement, second by Mr. Taylor, to provide the speaker with 3 more minutes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Thank you very much, appreciate that. So what is difficult here is the person who builds this, what they really need to keep this roof pitched the same, which is a requirement for ADUs, they're going to have to do something, and there's all kinds of things you can do, but it makes it more difficult. So what they really need is 4.67 more feet, because this is 8.33 feet high here. So this is one impact with the new law. What you would basically see if you're standing out in the street right here and you looked, you would basically see maybe the tip of the top of this. It's not like something that's going to be a story above the first story, which is, and I don't know how many people actually in the planning department, the planning committee, everybody else actually considered that. And secondly, if you have a primary on a flat slope and you have an ADU, and I made the numbers, this is quite small, 484 square feet, it could be larger. I made it square. If you do the grade plane, this thing actually, because it's on a slope, you got to put the foundation higher, you end up needing 1.36 feet more, which is like, but it's, you know, if you're standing out in the street, if you're at the same height as the roof, it's the same height. The only reason this has to be taller is because you need a higher foundation down here, which is another, they only need 1.36 feet. So this is 2 points, which I would love for the city council to consider, and anyone else, and the rest of the points we'll save for some other time.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Clement.
I got to say, I understand where you're coming from. I mean, those seem like somewhat valid points. I don't know how hard it would be to work that in. It hadn't occurred to me about the roof structure. I mean, we've been talking in terms of, can the accessory dwelling be 2 stories when the primary dwelling is 1? And I think you make some good points about the roof line. I don't know, I think we're pretty close to approval tonight, so if we were going to modify something like that, it would take a little bit of work. I don't know.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Prince.
And just to let Mr. White and others know, you would be able to try to get granted a variance on your project in order to try to fit the individual needs of your given project. And that goes for anyone that would have a similar situation.
Am I allowed to address that or no? About the variance?
If you have a comment or a concern about that.
Yeah, the variance is actually a good thing. I actually have like 9 more points, which I have no time to go over, and I actually don't have them here. But but it's like there's so many. You just be doing variance, potentially variance after variance after variance, which puts a lot of burden on the homeowner to go through the process, which is, costs $1,200, and you got all the paperwork to do and such. So to me, the variance is a solution, but it's a cumbersome one, and I would think just a little tweaking of the code would help a lot, really help a lot, to eliminate a lot of the red tape or bureaucracy, or make it more streamlined. Something to consider. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Next is Ellie Larkin.
Thank you for this opportunity, and good evening, Mayor Laws and council members. My name is Allie Larkin. I'm Vice President for Washington Action for Safe Water. But long before I became that, back in 2003, I was elected to my first term as Commissioner for King County Water District 54, where I now serve in my second term as President of the Board. It wasn't until 2006 when I had read what the fluoride they put in our water actually was, a phosphate fertilizer. I couldn't believe that out of the smokestacks. I got a hold of this Dr. Paul Connett, who you got the book from. Well, my life has never been the same since. I was concerned about it because in my water district, our water comes from wells, does not need to be treated with chlorine according to Department of Health standards, and has never had fluoride added to it. So I began researching it, studying it, and I had a great concern because probably 1/3 of my constituents are, and I should include myself in it, senior citizens. But they live in Wesley homes, which is a large group. So I was kind of concerned that what would happen if they had fluoride in their water, the synergy with the prescription medicines they already take. Well, what I found out in my studying is that you find the fluoride in the SSIs or the antidepressants, it's in antibiotics, it's in all kinds of drugs. So they're already maybe taking it in some of their medications, but at least they're not chasing it down with fluoride. And with the presentation tonight, I keep hearing safe, effective, and legal. And every time I hear safe, effective, and legal, I go like that Broadway show. Show me, show me. I have yet to see any documents or any of those 3,000s that it's safe and legal. And another point I found really interesting I want to share with you, there are, I think it's a little over 50, you can find it on the Department of Health website, 50 Class A water districts in the state of Washington that add the fluoride to their water. There are 107 water districts that, since, maybe that's wrong, close to that number, you can find the exact number on the website, that buy water, because our population has grown, that buy water from those 50, so they end up with the fluoride, and then are required, to top it off to the 0.7. Another interesting thing that I in my research and my continuing study of it is the fluoride accidents. And I don't know if you've been aware of any of them. Huge one just over in Iceland. You have an accident with them, and from those tankers, it'll eat the cement in the sidewalk. It'll eat the roading. It's so volatile, so harmful, that they are now actually redesigning the tankers that go on to the semi-trucks or the rail cars to transport the fluoride. So it is, as I look at it and I do my continued studying, it's like, why in the world does anybody really believe that putting something this volatile, that is a known poison, a contaminant, not approved, into the drinking water in any amount? Any amount, because it accumulates over the years. So I hadn't planned on speaking tonight, so I just thought I'd throw a couple of things out to say this is really a rethink, and really where I want to see this go is I want to see it go to Olympia in front of our legislatures, because it is time to have an open discussion and do a rethink on this 60-year-old public policy that is not serving the whole well. So thank you for your time, and thank you for looking into this matter, because we need to live up to the Board of Washington's statement, working for a healthier, safer Washington. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr.
Yeah,
Corman.
I wanted to say that, several of the speakers, all of them have been very passionate. It's a different, kind of a different council night. But several of them have spoken about the thousands of hours they put into researching this and the 3,000 studies. And I don't want council to feel too daunted. The National Academy of Science study that I cited, that you can link to from the link that our utilities department gave us, it's lengthy, 530 pages, but the key is that distills down. The panel of scientists looked at all those 3,000 studies. So they basically took a bunch of them and dismissed them and said that hadn't been adequate controls. They took a bunch of others and said that for reasons or another that, they weren't relevant. And then they took the ones that they thought were relevant on both sides. They're on both sides. And ultimately said some areas of health, they're not worried, but then some areas of health that are very, very serious, they are still a little bit concerned, and recommended lowering the standard. But the key is you don't have to go through the 3,000 studies. You can catch it all with that one from 2006. The other thing I wanted to point out is we saw an illustration tonight of the kind of science that they would throw out. And I just kind of want to make the point that part of the presentation that we saw tonight showed how in King County we're mostly fluoridated. In other parts of the state we're mostly not. Then they showed that there's more cavities in other parts of the state than there are in King County, and reached the conclusion that that's because of fluoride. And the National Academy of Science would have thrown that out. It would have said, well, it could be socioeconomic, it could be that people are a lot wealthier in King County, it could be there's more dentists in King County. There's a lot of other reasons, and it hasn't been a controlled study. So it's important that when you look at data that you have all the information behind it, that it's scientific. But I'm not quite sure what council's going to do with this exactly. Or we'll all have different ideas. But I thank everybody that came and spoke about it tonight. And I guess one last thing I'd put on it is, I kind of, for me, it was a little bit of an adventure taking me somewhere I didn't quite expect as I read that study in more detail. The CDC study, which I thought was going to validate and prove fluoride was perfectly safe, and then left me with some questions. One of the speakers tonight that spoke in favor of fluoride made the statement, when making a medical decision, you have to weigh the pros and cons. And I think it would be very valid for people that don't want fluoride in the water to say, that's true when making a medical decision, but the law is very clear that it's up to the individual to make a medical decision, not a city council. So anyways, with that, ready to leave that topic. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Corman. Next is the consent agenda. Council, we have 7 items for your consideration. Are there any items a council member would like pulled for discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Zwicker.
Hearing none, I move the council concur in the consent agenda.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Zwicker, seconded by Mr. Corman, that council concur with the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to unfinished business, Mr. Zwicker.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I have a committee of the whole committee report regarding the budget, and it looks like Bonnie, I may be in possession of the original here, so I will pass that down, or there could be another version kicking around, but it looked like it was on real paper.
Committee of the Whole Committee Report, 2013-2014 Biennial Budget. The Committee of the Whole reviewed the proposed 2013-2014 budget in the amount of $237,264,263 and $220,066,920 for 2013 and 2014 respectively, and recommends concurrence in the following actions. 1, property tax levy. Set the property tax levy using the preliminary property tax worksheet provided by King County, showing estimated property taxes of taxes of $32,600,000 based on the $3.10 tax rate limit for 2013, including new construction and annexation levy. The property tax is a decrease of 4.52%, or $1,508,256 from the amount allowed for 2012. The proposed budget estimates of $32,213,209 and $33,174,538 for 2013 and 14, respectively, reflect the 2013 allowable levy adjusted for appeals, refunds, and collection allowances. 2, utility tax rate adjustment. Increase the tax on city-operated water, surface stormwater, and solid waste utilities by 0.8%, resulting in an additional $425,000 per year to partially restore resources needed for major maintenance of aging park infrastructure and public facilities, general government capital project fund projects that had decreased substantially over the past 4 years. 3, business license fee adjustment. Increase the minimum business license fee from $55 to $110, and the rate for any additional worker hour above the first 1,920 hours from .029 cents to .034 cents per hour, resulting in an additional $450,000 per year to partially restore resources needed for major maintenance of aging park infrastructure and public facilities that had decreased substantially over the past 4 years. 4, basic life support transport fee. Establish a new fee for basic life transport in the amount of $600 per transport and $14 per mile to take effect September 1, 2013. This fee will not apply to residents or employees of businesses located within a fire district having a fire benefit charge and contracting with the City of Renton for fire and emergency management services. 5, other rates and fee adjustment. Adjust pet license fees, recreation fees, park rental fees, golf course green fees, utility system development charges, and public works construction permit fees as documented in the proposed fee schedule located in Section 7, Appendix of the 2013-14 preliminary budget. 6, 2013 CDBG and 2013-14 Human Services funding. Approve the 2013 through 2014 General Fund Human Services funding allocations for 50 agencies in the amount of $469,654 each year for 2013 and 2014 respectively, and the 2013 CDBG funding allocation to the 3 agencies for public services funding and City of Renton Housing Repair Program for capital funding, together with the associated contingency plan based on previously received recommendations from the Human Services Advisory Committee and on public hearing comments. The committee also recommends that the mayor and city clerk be authorized to sign the allocation contracts as listed separately and attached to the report. Legislation. Approve the 2013-14 budget with changes to the 13-14 preliminary budget as just read in this report and present the related legislation for first reading, and this is signed by the council president.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Zwicker.
I move the council concur in the committee of the whole committee report.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Zwicker, seconded by Ms. Breyer, that council concur with the committee of whole committee report.
Mr. Mayor?
Any discussion? Yes, Ms. Palmer.
I would like to move that we remove item 4, the basic life support transport fee.
For discussion?
For dis-
Second?
Okay. Did you want to discuss it?
Yes. Discuss it now? Okay, I wasn't sure the order of that. In thinking about it and the presentations that were made last week, in my opinion, the money that is forecast isn't worth the confusion for the people, our residents that would call and wouldn't, because you've got some fire districts, so it creates some people can get transported without pay, others can't, so I can foresee confusion in all areas. There's the issue of the upcoming election for Fire District 40 as well as the King County EMS that will probably point to this as an issue of why not to vote for those, which would mean $1 million or more that goes into the fire and emergency service budget. And again, the amount that is projected to me isn't worth the bad will when we have the majority, if not 100%, of the firefighter union against it. And so I don't support it.
So, was that a proposed amendment to the motion of Mr. Zwicker, or
Remove it from the,
was there a second to the amendment?
Well, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Corman.
Well, I seconded it to discuss it, but I think we should discuss it. Frankly, I think we owe it to the firefighters to discuss it, and it might be a tough discussion. I think that all of us probably would like to be able to because the firefighters don't want that fee, to not have that fee. I think the question is, from my conversation with you where we discussed this afternoon and other times, it was $350,000 that we'd have to find somewhere else in order to produce a balanced budget that would meet the audit that that we have every year. We have to be able to show that we have a balanced budget. And I understand from our conversation that the fee doesn't go into effect probably by the time it's all worked out for another year. But still, it's part of the 2-year budget, and it's the only way we can get it to balance. So I think what we'd have to figure out is where we'd come up with. I see it as we have two options. We either adopt the budget with this mechanism, and then we could look for ways to find different efficiencies that could remove it. Although that'll create a little bit of a Sophie's choice where we'll get a year down the road and go, but if we keep it, we could keep 2 extra fire positions or something. So that would be tough. Plus, the downside of doing it that way is that any impact on the confusion during the upcoming bond issue would be present if we include this. On the other hand, if we don't include it, we've got to look for $350,000 in cuts, which actually means personnel, probably, and unless somebody has ideas. And so that's the dilemma. But frankly, I'm glad that you brought it up, because I think we owe it to the firefighters that do so much for us to at least have this discussion.
and there's the cost of administering the program. Is that going to be in-house or a collection agency that would follow up on those?
Consultant.
Pardon?
I thought when I asked last week, they were talking about a consultant would handle that.
And so their incentive would be to get the money because they get a percentage of it. So they would go after it probably more aggressively than I would want.
Looks like Ewan's coming up to the microphone.
I'm Ewan Wong, Administrative Services Administrator. In following up in the conversation in terms of collection charge, there's a firm in this area that does the collection for all, most of the jurisdiction implement the fee, and they charge a set fee at $21 per billing. And so for each account they send to be collected, they will deduct $21. And the revenue projection taken that into consideration already. So it's net amount, net of the collection cost.
Thank you.
Well, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr.
I guess,
Person.
I mean, you got this $350,000 and we're going to make it up. And it seems to me from conversations that it's going to come out of the fire department. So, because if it comes out of the fire department, we're going to be laying fire people off. It just, I mean, it's an unfortunate situation that we find ourselves in. But our economy isn't bouncing back the way we planned on it. It's something that we can, I would agree with Randy that we could put it in there, and then if things change, we find another extra $350,000 somewhere which we're not going to, we could reconsider it. And, you know, I had the same conversation with obviously fire people, and I understand their concerns, but we have to have a balanced budget. And I was looking in the one of the publications we got from AWC about some of the problems, you know, Snohomish, city Snohomish, because of their budget woes, had to close their police department. And then there's several other places that are looking at the closing stuff. I mean, and we're very lucky that we have Ewan, who has done some very conservative budget, analysis that gives us some wiggle room, and that we are in good shape. But this is, I mean, I don't see a way around it. So my suggestion is that we put it in so that we can balance the budget. I don't see any other alternative.
Yes, Mr. Taylor.
Yeah, this is a tough one. At the end of the day, it's clear that there's a limit to how much money that we have to spend. That being said, I support a responsible and a balanced budget, but also making sure that we are strengthening our budget for the long haul, and that we're not making choices that ultimately are going to, come back to bite us. So I would support it staying in and looking down the road. I think that's questionable in doing that, in the sense that, not that we don't want to do it, we do understand the issues that, our local, is concerned about. But when you balance a budget, you do it with the intention of knowing that, here's where you're going to go and this is what you're going to do. And the ambiguity that exists in our kicking the can, so to speak, a little troubling to me. But, if that's the only option that we have right now to try to find another opening somewhere down the road, I could live with that.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Zwicker.
Yeah, I think we've all struggled with it. But bottom line is that we do have to achieve a balanced budget. This would create a hole in that budget, which would have to be filled somewhere else, and most likely that would be a reduction in staff, be it from fire or somewhere else. It's that large a number. But I also think a major consideration is that the collection of this fee is from insurance companies that are willing to pay this fee. This isn't necessarily collecting from the person who wanted to call, and I understand the concern about somebody being hesitant to call, and I would definitely strongly support some sort of public information. But I ran into the same thing, to throw my mom under the bus. She doesn't like to call 911 because she doesn't want to bother the busy firefighters. So there's a public information issue there, and the fee, I understand that there's probably an example of it out there dissuading people, but people need to know to call, and I'd be happy to address that. But we have money that can come into the budget from billing something that should be billed, and I think we owe it to the taxpayers to be collecting the money that we can collect from outside sources to balance our budget. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Prince.
Randy, you made an excellent comparison when you said selfish choice. I've been sitting here because I, like the rest of you, have had conversations with the local, and I had some concerns about this, and I've expressed the concerns to everyone. But when I look at this and I look at, do we fill the budget hole with this, or do we reduce staff services? I don't know how, we're lean and mean already. I don't know how we go about, doing that, and if we're reducing fire service, then are we hurting response times for our residents that have emergencies? I think Greg said this is tough, and this is a really tough issue. But I feel like we've got to find a way to be fiscally responsible.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Carmen.
Yeah, when we talked, and when you and I talked, I know we sort of worked out, we're getting the maximum utility tax we're allowed. We're taking the maximum property tax and losing revenues there. We get a fixed part of sales tax, that's all we get. We might have got more if West Hill had annexed or whatever, but we don't have that, and that's probably better and financially anyways. We're getting the maximum gambling tax, is getting revenues from everywhere else that we can. We've pushed fees, I think, to the point where if we push fees on swim lessons and dances any higher, we get fewer customers. Like any business, they just stop coming. They won't golf if the green fee gets higher, and we'll actually have less money. So I think we're at the maximum revenue situation. So then we just have to look at the budget and say, well, what can we get rid of? And we've carved out just about everything that's not personnel. So it is a tough situation. But I guess I want to assure everybody, including the firefighters in the room, that we kind of exhaustively went through that. There were banner years in the past that I can remember well, Don Person and Terry remembers, when we had surpluses and we didn't have to take the maximum property tax amount, and something like this could have been handled easily, but this is a different situation.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes. Ms.
I was
Bryant.
going to say, it's not a new subject. It's something we've kind of been trying to put off for a number of years. The topic has come up before. And the hard part is it's still not even a really flexible, it's a flexible number, because it's just based on a guesstimate of how much we'll recover. So even that isn't very reassuring, I don't think, to the department for how much they might recoup from it. But I don't know how else we can do the budget right now and make it balance without some new idea. So I think, I'm willing to go forward with it and continue to look at, see what other opportunities there might be for revenue.
Is there any other discussion by council? Ms. Palmer, did you want to just move forward with, I kind of clouded this by saying, did you want to amend the motion? But I think what you wanted was discussion on the floor of the field, and you want to go forward with just a vote on the motion to adopt the committee report?
Yeah.
Okay. So is there any further discussion on this motion? It's been moved and seconded that we approve the committee of the whole committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
One no, the motion carries. Thank you, and thanks for the discussion.
That was all, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Mr. Taylor.
No new business, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Mr. Corman? The old business?
Old business.
Sorry, no old business.
Sorry, my iPad locked up there. Nope, no old business.
Okay.
I think I got it from you before I got it here.
Ms. Palmer?
No.
Okay,
No,
Mr.
finish.
Person?
No.
Mr. Prince?
No unfinished business, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Ms. Breyer?
No unfinished business.
Okay. Moving on to resolutions and ordinances, we have one resolution and 8 ordinances for first reading.
The first, the resolution regarding adoption of the 2013-14 fee schedule. A resolution of the City of Renton, Washington, adopting the 2013-2014 City of Renton fee schedule.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Ms. Breyer.
I move the resolution be adopted as read.
Second.
Been moved by Ms. Breyer, seconded by Mr. Zwicker, that this resolution be adopted as read. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
The first ordinance for first reading regards the Title IV Docket 8 Code Amendments. An ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, amending Chapter 2 Zoning Districts, Uses and Standards, Chapter 3 Environmental Regulations and Overlay Districts, Chapter 4 Citywide Property Development Standards, Chapter 6 Street and Utility Standards, Chapter 7 Subdivision Regulations, Chapter 8 Permits General and Appeals, Chapter 9 Permits Specific, and Chapter 10 legal non-conforming structures, uses, and lots, and Chapter 11 definitions of Title IV development regulations of City Code, codifying the Title IV Docket 8 amendments by adding a new Section 41045 entitled Vesting, revising code language, and adding, amending, and deleting definitions.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Prince.
I move that the ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting.
Second?
Been moved by Mr. Prince, seconded by Ms. Breyer, that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Person.
Since we have, the week to take a look at this, I was just wondering if we could have maybe Chip take a look at the comments made tonight. I mean, I remember out in Maplewood, there was a housing development that, next to the barber shop.
Right.
And the person came in with the same kind of
Right.
roof thing.
And we worked,
Yeah.
and we worked it through, yeah.
And we worked it through. So I'm just, maybe,
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Ms. Breyer.
Well, I kind of concur. When Mr. Prince talked about variances, I know a lot of things can be done through administrative variances too, depending on what the situation is. And I kind of felt like some of the things he was describing might be satisfied that way, so.
So we'll definitely look into that.
Yeah.
I agree. I think that's a good suggestion.
Okay, Bonnie?
The next ordinance for first reading regards the Docket 8 Technical Corrections Code Amendment. An ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, amending Chapter 1 Administration and Enforcement, Chapter 2 Zoning Districts, Uses and Standards, Chapter 3 Environmental Regulations and Overlay Districts, Chapter 4 Citywide Development Regulations, Chapter 5 Building and Fire Prevention Standards, Chapter 6 Street and Utility Standards, Chapter 7 Subdivision Regulations, Chapter 8 Permits General and Appeals, Chapter 9 Permits Specific, Chapter 10 Legal Non-Conforming Structures, Uses, and Lots, and Chapter 11 Definitions of Title IV Development Regulations of City Code by making technical corrections to Title IV and adding, amending, and deleting definitions.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Prince.
I move the ordinance be placed on second and final meeting at the next council meeting.
Second?
Been moved by Mr. Prince, seconded by Ms. Breyer, that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
The next ordinance regards basic life support, emergency medical transport fee. An ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, amending Title V, Finance and Business Regulations of City Code by adding a new Chapter 24 entitled Basic Life Support, Emergency Medical Services Transport User Fee.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Zwicker.
move this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting.
Second?
It's been moved by Mr. Zwicker, seconded by Mr. Corman, that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
The ayes have it.
The next ordinance regarding relocating the system development fees to the fee schedule. An ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, amending Section 41180 of Chapter 1 Administration and Enforcement of Title 4 Development Regulations of City Code by relocating system development fees to the City of Renton fee schedule brochure and eliminating fee calculation examples.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Zwicker.
move that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting.
Second?
It's been moved by Mr. Zwicker, seconded by Mr. Corman, that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
The next ordinance for first reading, updating business license fee regulations code amendment. An ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, amending Sections 551 and 553 of Chapter 5 Business Licenses of Title 5 Finance and Business Regulations of City Code by updating code language regarding business license fees.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Zwicker.
move that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting.
Second?
It's been moved by Mr. Zwicker, seconded by Ms. Breyer, that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
The next ordinance regards establishing the 2013 property tax level. An ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, establishing the property tax levy for the year 2013 for general city operational purposes in the amount of $32,563,355.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Zwicker.
move that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Zwicker, seconded by Mr. Corman, that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
The next ordinance for first reading regards the 2013 utility tax rates. An ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, amending Section 511(1) of Chapter 1, Utility Tax of Title 5, Finance and Business Regulations of City Code relating to utility tax rates imposed on water, surface water, and solid waste utility enterprises.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Zwicker.
move that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting.
Second.
Been moved by Mr. Zwicker, seconded by Mr. Corman, that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
And the last ordinance for first reading regards adopting the 2013-14 biennial budget. An ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, adopting the biennial budget for the years 2014 in the amounts of $237,264,263 and $220,066,920 respectively.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Zwicker.
move this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Zwicker, seconded by Mr. Corman, that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, Bonnie. Moving on to new business, Mr. Zwicker.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, for information, at the end of the meeting, I will be moving us into executive session, but at this point, I'd like to call out the committee of the whole meeting here in council chambers for December 3rd at 6 p.m. And has one topic, 2013 legislative agenda. That is all, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Taylor.
No new business, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Mr. Corman.
I always like announcing this one. It's like the Department of Redundancies Department. Announcing a meeting of the Committee on Committees. And that'll be in the council conference room at 5:30 p.m. on December 3rd. And we just have one item on the agenda, and that's 2013 council committee assignments. And I'd ask the council to be sure you get your requests in between now and that meeting time, and we'll do our very best to make sure everybody gets on the committees of their choice and they're chairing the committees of their choice next year.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you. Ms. Palmer.
No new business.
Okay, Mr. Person.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Next Monday, December 3rd, that's scary that it's December.
I know.
already. 4:30 p.m., the Public Safety Committee will meet. We have three topics, first response, fire and safety vehicle options, and 2 Valley Communications CAD / radio system upgrades, and thirdly, emerging issues in public safety. And then I'd just like to bring 2 events to the council's attention. First of all, on Thanksgiving Day, tremendous thanks to city employees who took their time on Thanksgiving morning to open the Renton Senior Center so that the seniors could come in and use the center, and they played games and that, and then they helped serve dinner along with the Renton Rotary Club paid all the expenses for the dinner. We managed to serve 240 sit-down meals, another 150 takeout dinners, and then about 50 dinners were sent over to the Renton Community Center for the people who had been burned out of their apartments up in Skyway, and they'd set emergency shelter up, and I checked with Terry today, and we sent enough food over there so that they were still having turkey and ham sandwiches the next day, and they were all thankful for that. And then the week before event I was unable to attend, there was a fundraiser for one of our police officers who has cancer. And there's 2 people I really want to call out and say a big thank you to who donated their time, and that's Martin Patricelli with the Seattle Sons of Italy, and Larry Sleeth. Thanks to them, the whole dinner was provided at no cost. So all of the meal expenses were able to go to the charity of Cancer for Cops. So they're two outstanding citizens in our community, and they were both there at 5 o'clock on Thanksgiving morning helping us cook there too. So I just want to say thank you to them. That's it.
Okay, Mr. Prince.
No new business, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Ms. Breyer?
Yes, Finance Committee will meet next Monday, December 3rd at 3 p.m. We have 5 items: vouchers, emerging issues and revenue streams, the Renton Housing Authority lease of the Cleveland property, bad debt write-off, and Copper Ridge request for utility billing adjustment. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Next is audience comment. Is there anybody who didn't have an opportunity to address the council?
Good evening. My name is Stuart Avery, Renton, Washington. I wanted to comment regarding the proposed amendment to the budget, Chapter 24, the emergency transport fee. I believe it was $600. And listening to the discussion about that, and I'm really glad that you are talking about that. As a husband and a father, homeowner in Renton, and fully employed working citizen of our community, I have health care insurance coverage through my employer, which covers my whole family. And it's a very good policy, but it's what's called the high deductible policy, which means that in any given calendar year, I have a $5,000 deductible that I have to hit before a single penny is paid towards any of my or my family's medical expenses. So this proposed $600 transport fee would, in most cases, be out of pocket for me, even though I am fully insured. A lot of people are moving towards, or employers are moving towards these high deductible policies because they can't afford the premium policies that they used to be able to afford their employees. And so basically the employees take a burden of responsibility in paying a good portion of their health care coverage through a high deductible. But what that allows me to do is it allows me to keep the very good coverage that Regency provides in the event of a catastrophic emergency or debilitating disease or some other thing happens to me. I've got good coverage. So I would just comment that even though you're billing the insurance company for this fee, the insurance company is going to turn around and send the bill to me in a case like this. With a high deductible insurance policy, it's very difficult for a family to make a decision as to whether or not they're going to seek health care coverage or doctor's visit or something like that. You have to weigh out, how important is it, because we know it's coming out of pocket. And it's very rare that we spend enough money every year where we hit that deductible. That's mainly because we try to stay healthy. What I would encourage you to do is to look at some other areas for revenue outside of this. One of the things I had listened to is that you were increasing your business licensing fee from, I think you said $55 to $110. Was that the Chapter 5 amendment that you were talking about? In my mind, if you're a Fortune 500 company and you are based in Renton and you're paying an annual business licensing fee, that doesn't seem like a lot of money. As a new business starting out, that might be a ton of money. And what I propose that you might want to look at is having a tiered licensing fee. Maybe first-time businesses, I'll pay a flat rate. After a year, if they generate a certain amount of revenue based on their taxes that they're paying the city, that fee maybe is increased to balance with the type of business that they do. That could be one way to generate revenue. Another thing that I would suggest too is that when I'm walking around downtown, I see a lot of the A-frame signs that are out in front of some of the established businesses, and a lot of those have a licensing tag on them. Now, I haven't looked into what that entails. How do you get a license to place a sign on the sidewalk? But I can tell you that when I'm walking up in the Highlands area, and there are a lot of A-frame signs out on the sidewalks, and I don't see those same licensing tags on those signs. So if there is revenue coming into the city that is generated by a fee that is being collected to, legally put a sign on the sidewalk to promote your business, then I would ask that the city look at ways of enforcing existing policies and fees so that you are collecting as you are due the amount of revenue that those fees were meant to collect, rather than trying to find new ways to raise money but not following through with collecting on the programs that you've already got running. So there's just a couple of things. The other thing I wanted to mention too is that Governor Gregoire is pushing through the possibility that internet sales will be taxed. And there might be the possibility, if that happens, that a good amount of tax revenue could trickle down to the city level if that happens, as more and more people are shopping online and spending their money online. When they're buying out of state, they're typically not paying the sales tax to the state they're buying from. And when people are buying from out of state through a internet business based, say, in Renton, they are not being charged the sales tax at this point. If that changes, then there'll be some additional tax revenue coming in too. So those are just some forecasting things to be thoughtful of. But I just wanted to bring that up, that there might be some other ways to kind of find the money without necessarily having to impose this transport fee, which in my case would be pretty debilitating if I had to cough up an extra $600 to get my wife or myself to the hospital because of my high deductible insurance program.
Fair.
Thank you for your time.
May I ask Mr. Avery, you bring up a really interesting point. And like I said earlier, if there was any way to get rid of the transport fee, if we could come up with something the next quarter or something, I'd love to see us do that before it ever gets implemented. But one thing I did want to point out is, I think it's something like 92% of the time when you make that call, if there's a transport, it will be a private ambulance. At least that's my understanding, and I'd like somebody to correct if I'm wrong. So it's kind of playing the lottery whether if you say you need transport. Actually, I think if you're in really bad shape, you would get transported if you had a life-threatening condition. No one can know what the medical outcome or the situation would be. Maybe it's a false alarm, but if it was something very serious, I think as soon as you hit the hospital, you might suddenly hit your deductible.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, but still, I think you make a good point. I think we saw this as very sort of collegiate. The insurance company would pay, the citizen would never see anything. And you make a good point that people with high deductibles, they would in fact see this bill. I think I would just point out, and I'm not making an argument in favor of what we did tonight, but just for anybody's benefit, because we're down to one aid car, and we all regret that we can't have more aid cars, but since we're down to one, they use private ambulance so much that as soon as you're going to get transported by anything other than your own car, you're liable to hit that fee anyways. But thanks for the point. Good thoughts.
All right.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Person.
Well, I'd like to just clear one thing about the business fee. If you say that's just $110, it really isn't, because Boeing's is not paying us a $110 business fee. They pay so much per employee in addition to that, and it's all calculated on the number of hours that they work based on that $110 fee. So
Okay.
The business license fee to Boeing's, for instance, is megabucks.
I would hope so, yeah. And a lot of the other big businesses, yeah.
About the only one that pays just a strictly $110 fee is a one-person business.
One-person business.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mark?
Mark Dos Remedios, lowercase d-o-s, space R-E-M-E-D-I-O-S, residing Federal Way. I'm the president of the Firefighters Union. Mr. Mayor and council members, first let me thank you very much for your deliberation and your looking at our fee for transport. As was clearly stated, the firefighters do oppose fee for transport. As I said last week, and I'll reiterate, the fire department is not here to generate revenue. We're here to provide for the public safety. I realize that you have to pass a balanced budget. I understand the difficult times that we're in, and I guess more than anything wanted to say that while the decisions you make every day as a council member are tough, sometimes those decisions, the tough ones, they need to be made. And whether it be a good decision or a bad decision, that decision should not be based on a dollar. That decision should be based on whether or not something makes sense for the citizens that you serve, that we serve. I've worked for this department for 12 years, and I'm one of the new guys. We got guys who've been here 35 years. We have an aging workforce that has provided a level of service that we believe is second to none in King County, and I would like to argue statewide or even nationwide. I think that we provide that high a level of service. And it is unfortunate that we have lost some of our aid cars due to staffing cuts, due to budgetary cuts, due to the fiscal problems that we have encountered out of any of our control. But at the same time, to balance that budget on the back of something which truly does represent such a minuscule portion of the budget, and I realize that every penny counts. But as the president of the local, I have tried to work with our administration, with the city, and come up with money-saving ideas, with ways that we could provide an increase in staffing and a decrease in the department costs. And my frustration lies in the fact that I have been met with resistance on all fronts. We as a local have tried to work with the city for years and years and years, and we've always been the first ones at the bargaining table to say, you know what, we're good, thank you for your consideration of us. We feel that you respect us, that you take care of us. And unfortunately, I think I can speak for my whole body when we don't feel supported tonight, because we provide a level of service, we provide safety for the community and for our members, for ourselves, with a certain staffing level, and we don't want to do that at a further cost to the taxpayer. The citizens advisory panels that the city puts together made it perfectly clear that if we were going to charge for transport, that they thought it should provide an increase in fire department service. And as I said last week, this doesn't cut that. We're barely scraping by. We did some politicking to even scrape by to keep our aid car in service that we have. And to say that we're going to implement something which we asked the citizens what they thought about, and they were very clear on their, yeah, do this because it's going to make things better. Well, we're not doing them any service. And I work in a service-related industry, and unfortunately, I feel like I'm going to be doing somebody a disservice when I have to charge them for transport. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Zwicker.
I move that the council meeting recess into executive session for approximately 30 minutes to discuss labor negotiations.
Second.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes,
Apologize.
Mr.
I wanted to bring up 2 points I should have, but we do have 2 events this weekend that I probably should have mentioned under administrative report. We have clam lights on Friday night and the Christmas tree lighting on Saturday. So if anybody's still listening, please come on down Friday and Saturday.
It's been moved and seconded that we recess into executive session to discuss labor negotiations for 30 minutes. The council meeting will adjourn following that session. No action will be taken. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're